Hey y'all, how y'all doing? How's all my 2020 survivors and my viewers and my subscribers? Yes, y'all, I'm back with another video. But before I do it, I think I better explain myself again, y'all. So I think I told y'all that I had to get a new phone because my old phone, the camera was acting up and I didn't know what to do, so I just got another phone. And see, everything I do with this video, I'm doing it on my own and I'm just learning as I go along. So yes, there's a lot of mistakes being made. But I hope that in the future, as I always say, that things are going to get better, y'all. Until then, I'm still just keep putting this information out and just keep hoping and praying. So, like I was saying, I think it's like 3 channels up there now. One with 10 subscribers, and my main channel is the one with the 100 and some subscribers. But since I'm doing these recent videos since I got the new phone, it looks like all my videos are going on in subscriptions for my 10 subscribers. It's like I'm starting all over again, so I don't know, y'all. I'm just gonna have to do what I gotta do and just keep hanging in there and inch my way through. So with that being said, I'm gonna go over surviving the stigma. Men are domestic violence survivors too. And that was by Marissa Burke. It was published October 7th, 2021. And it was updated like 4 hours or more ago. And it says NBC 2, Nebraska. So, North Platte, Nebraska. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So during this time, organizations throughout the nation are working to raise awareness about resources and education. So last year at the North Platte Rape, Domestic and Abuse Program, RDAP, they helped 315 survivors of domestic violence, victimization, and of those survivors, 18 were male. It is real and it does happen, says Amber Garza, RDAP's Community Engagement Coordinator. People may think it just happens to women, but we need to get out the stigma that it does not happen to men. Because yes, it does. I grew up seeing men being physically abused and mentally. Domestic violence is also known as intimate partner violence, and it can include physical and sexual violence, stalking, and psychological aggression. Studies show that over 43 million women and 38 million men have experienced psychological aggression by an intimate partner in their lifetime. So according to a 2017 report by the Nebraska Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence, according to a 2017 report by the Nebraska Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence, over 17,000 victims and survivors were provided services. And of that 17,000, 1,308 were adult males. With males, there is a stereotype that they do not need to show emotion and that they need to man up, said Garza. We need to educate our youth and share that it's okay to reach out because violence does happen to males also. On October 16, RDAP is hosting the Fall Festival at the Black Ledge Park from noon to 4 p.m. And there will be various activities, including a bake sale. All proceeds from the event will go back to RDAP to help survivors and bring awareness to domestic violence. So I guess if anyone that lives in, Nebraska? Is it Nebraska? I want to get it right, yes. Lives in North Platte, Nebraska. You want to think about attending that affair with domestic violence. So, now I'm going to go over, let's see. So yes, men are victims of domestic violence. And now I'm going to tell a story from one man who was a victim of domestic violence. So, when men become victims of domestic violence, they usually find it hard to seek help and they are ashamed to admit that they are vulnerable and fear no one will believe them. So, Tammy, I don't know if I'm saying his name right. It's Tami, so I'm just going to say Tam. Tam was one of them, and here's his story. Tam Wesenberg's story as a victim of abuse began with a familiar male misconception. I can be her savior. That was what he thought when he first met the woman who would become his girlfriend. She told him about how she had in the past experienced violence. Now, she told him how in the past she had experienced violence. She told him about how she had been beaten in a previous relationship. She spoke about how unhappy she had become. Tam was deeply moved. He hoped to help her and to prove to her that not all men are the same, that they can be caring and considerate. The idea that all she said was just one big show designed to win my trust, to instrumentalize me, Wesenberg recalls, was something that simply didn't occur to him at the time. It was the beginning of a desperately painful 6-year relationship. Now, he endured this abuse for 6 years. Wesenberg is a confident man. He is built like a tree, tall and sturdy. He's a guy who likes to get things done, and he tells his story in a calm and measured tone. Tam, a victim? Many will find it hard to imagine, but beware of those cliches that suggest that a victim must be small, soft, and weak, especially if the victim is a man. Emotional dependency is the key to violence. Emotional dependency is the key to violence. Tam and his girlfriend moved in together. He supported her, both emotionally and financially. He remembers it as a rewarding relationship, and as they grew closer, they didn't just share an apartment, but also a bank account and their day-to-day routines. Soon they were almost completely dependent on each other. And then things took a turn for the worse. It first began when we were on holiday. We booked ourselves into a hotel that didn't meet my girlfriend's expectations, and she refused to pay the bill. Weisenberg remembers. She wanted me to back her up, wanted me to tell the hotel manager that his place was a dump, but I refused, feeling ashamed to be doing him down. Instead, I went ahead and got into the car and left her to do her own thing. And when she got into the car, she started to slap me around the head and screamed at me. So this is where that abuse starts. So I thought, that's not going to happen again, that I refused to stand by her. His girlfriend tried to justify her outburst by telling him about her troubled childhood. A childhood without love or affection, without stability or continuality, and he bought it. I felt like a servant. As the years went by, the emotional dependency grew. I felt like a servant who always had to get everything right. Tam remembers, he says it was his top priority to please his girlfriend and follow all her rules. There were rules for everything in their day-to-day lives. Which piece of fruit to choose, how to pluck it, how to serve it. And if I didn't please her, then it was bam, a blow to the head. It was always the same thing. Get it right and please her, or there will be trouble. But it was never good enough. His partner's wishes became more extreme, the violence as well. Eventually, Weisenberg ended up in the emergency ward with cuts and broken bones. Still, he didn't defend himself, didn't hit back. For many years, he hoped that she would see the error of her ways. I was a bundle of nerves, trying to function to meet her expectations, not to repeat my mistakes. There were no time to feel lonely or reflect on my situation. Now, see, he's already saying that he was trying not to repeat his mistakes. So already she has him feeling that he must be doing something wrong. Because why is she always hitting him upside of the head? Why is she always mentally abusing him? So now he's thinking he must be doing something wrong. Maybe you got to get it better, he's thinking. Maybe you got to do better. That's what he's thinking. So as the years went by, it seemed less and less likely that help would come from outside. His girlfriend controlled all his social contacts. The couple began to avoid anybody who might suspect what was going on, including family members. Vulnerable men. Tam's story is similar to that of many of the approximately 26,000 men officially listed as victims of domestic violence in Germany in 1 year. Official German figures also show that nearly 20% of domestic violence victims are men. Society doesn't recognize that there are also vulnerable men who are not perpetrators but victims, says Elizabeth Bates, a researcher at the University of Cumbria in northern England. The way that violence against men is sometimes portrayed on TV or in comedy programs is in the context of humor, she says. So we might laugh at women's violence towards men, and that does really have an impact. There are a number of things that stop men from seeking help, like the fear that no one will believe them or take them seriously. And the way it's portrayed in the media And the way we talk about it can add to that fear. Base research shows that as a result of the way they are perceived by society, men find it hard to see themselves as victims of domestic violence. But this can come at a huge cost for the male victims. They all describe long-term mental and physical health problems resulting from the violence they experience, Bate explains. The spectrum of men's experience is wide. According to a pilot study from Germany's Ministry for Family Affairs, 2004, every sixth man in Germany says he has been aggressively pushed by his partner. 10% were mildly slapped, painfully kicked, or had objects thrown at him. And most common are reports of emotional aggression. The partner might, for instance, cut off social contacts and control, humiliate, or assault the victim, says the co-author of the study. I'm not sure if I'm saying the name right, Ralph, R-A-L-F, Puchert, P-U-C-H-E-R-T, Ralph Puchert, I guess, who goes on. Approximately the same number of men as women say that they have experienced violence in a relationship at least one time in their lives. In relationships, men tend to experience serious violence far less frequently than women. But it is, however, not just a matter of isolated individual cases. Tam Weisenberg says the blows he received from his partner were not the worst aspect of their relationship. The pain from the psychological violence went much deeper. One day she was standing in front of me, and then she took off her bathrobe and was naked. Then she started beating herself, scratching herself, and shouting, "Stop it! Oh, ow, that hurts." So there I was, standing in front of her, immobilized, and asking myself, what's this all about? And when she finished her assault, she got back into her bathrobe before pulling a small recorder out of her pocket. That really is a fine thing, a little dictating device. It's my joker, she said, and left the room. From then on, she threatened to blackmail him if he told anybody about her violence. Tam felt paralyzed. I didn't dare step out of line. I was so scared of losing face in society, of losing out professionally, and of not in any way being seen as a victim, but as a perpetrator. And with fear, you can hold people down and lock them in, and that's so true. Now, that was her way of controlling him, because she knew if she had all these marks and bruises on her body, she took pictures and recordings, and she took them to the police. 9 times out of 10, they may believe him. They may believe her, because after all, that's a man. She's a woman, and they can't quite get it through their heads that men are victims also. So she was smart enough to pull us together to actually take all her clothes off. So you know something was wrong right there. Something was very wrong. That she's going to take her clothes off, beat her own body so she could have marks and bruises, just to hold this against her husband, was it? Against her husband? To keep him from telling about the fact she's the one abusing him. And these things do happen. I can't think of the movie that I saw, but the woman, whoever it was playing in the movie, she did the same thing. She took something and wrapped it up and made herself have a black eye and everything. I mean, it's just too much, y'all. That's why I do this. This is the reason I do this, so that you can be aware of the signs, so you won't get too far into these relationships before it's too late. I want you to learn to see the signs and think about it. And the perpetrator is not going to stop unless they get help. And before they get help, they have to realize that they have a problem. So while you're waiting on them to do all that, the best thing I advise is to seek help for yourself to help you figure out the best way for you to go. You got to think about your circumstances. You know, is it best for me to leave, or should I try to make it work? Then you got to think about the amount of abuse that's inflicted upon you. Because with mental and physical abuse, a lot of times the physical abuse, it heals up. But that mental abuse is always there. It's always there. A global problem. Figures show that men have similar experiences across the globe. Statistics from Mexico suggest that around 25% of all victims of domestic violence are men. In Kenya, Nigeria, or Ghana, unemployment and poverty regularly trigger violence from female partners. And it is the same story worldwide. Little or no support for male victims, especially in rural areas. But things may slowly be changed in Germany. Earlier this year, the country's first helpline for male victims came into operation. Good. The men are looking for a place where people are going to listen. Somewhere where they don't have the feeling that they're once again just going to be told to pull themselves together, says Andrews Heiss from the Man on Main Advice Center in the city of Bielefeld, which operates the telephone hotline. Demand is high. Dozens of men call up each week, hoping to get the help they need, like Weisenberg. Many of them see little hope. Many of the men who call us are frightened of change. They think, if I go now, then she'll really make my life hell. Many of them are fathers who are terrified that contact with their children might be cut off if they break away from a troubled relationship. So that's why, you get a protection order. You get a protection from abuse order so that you'll still be able to see your children. So, it also says that German phone helplines are upper limits in coronavirus. And not only in Germany, but here in the United States and probably all over. So, especially because of the corona. So a lot of them don't even see themselves as victims of domestic violence, says Andres Hayes. A certain familiarity with violence is all part and parcel of being a man. Violence on the street, violence in the schoolyard, is all standard fare for boys and men. Men grow up in societies where heroism is an important aspect of manliness, says British criminologist Anthony Whitehead. Researchers and therapists focusing on men's experiences agree that they must first be liberated from the prison of traditional images of what is expected of men. Then they must learn that they are not alone. At the Bielefeld hotline, the first priority is to get the men to accept that they are victims, which is normally a huge relief for them. For Andrews heist from man to man, the goal is that the men begin a process where they have many more options and where, for the first time, they begin to accept their feelings. Tam's escape. This clear realization that things could not go on came to Tammy Weinberg's right out of the blue. The turning point was when I had a sore throat and took a lift home from work. In fact, I should have been heading directly to the next pharmacy, but that wasn't possible because my daily journey home was mapped out to the last detail, with telephone calls along the route to make sure that I was on my way. And that made me so helpless. Can you imagine what it's like? So I decided not to go home ever again. So he says he decided not to go home ever again. And that sounds so familiar because that's what I did many years ago. I'll never forget it. It was on a snowy day. I'm short. I'm 5 feet. So the snow was, must have came up to almost to my waist. And I took my children that day and with no intentions of leaving at that moment. But I gathered my clothes and I took them to the laundromat, which was a couple blocks from my mother's house. And I told the kids, well, we'll go to the grandmom's house, while the clothes were washing and all. And by the time I left out of my mom's house to go get my clothes from the laundromat, oh my, and it snowed even harder. So I just said, well, we'll spend the night and go home the next day. But I never went back. The only time I did go back was to get my things, to get me and my children's things. And I'll never forget that day, and I told that story in another video. But I had got my ex-husband's brother to help me to move the things out of the apartment, and which he did. And at the same time, my ex-husband pulled up. So he waited till his brother came and got a few more things, took him out to the truck. And that's when he locked the door. I was still in the apartment. That's when he locked the door. And yes, that's when I was physically abused at that time. But I made it out, and his brother, thank God he was there. And, he helped me to get out the apartment. I got the rest of my things, and I left. I went to my mom's, and because I had gotten another house around the corner from her. But yes, when I washed my clothes that day, and maybe that snow was a signal, because I just never went back except to get my things. But, that's not the end of the story. I just remembered. I did leave. I was going a little bit, and then I didn't know I was pregnant when I left, so I wound up taking him back. But it didn't work. And eventually, we split up again. But I know where he was coming from when he said he just decided not to go back home. And sometimes it gets to that point when you're in an abusive situation. And one day you just say to yourself, I'm done. Either you'll go to a shelter, or maybe you have somewhere else you can go, to parents or close friends or hotel, or you have the money, just to keep on moving, just to keep it moving. But you just finally come to the conclusion, it's like a wake-up call, that I'm out of here. This is not going to work. I'm gone. No one deserves to be abused. So Weisenberg helped himself to escape from a toxic relationship. What I was missing back then was somewhere I could turn to with my fears and worries, especially as a man. That is why I later set up a self-help group where it became clear to me just how many men there are who need all sorts of help. The Weisenberg Self-Help Group is now more specialized and established, offering counseling for men in crisis situations and safe spaces to take refuge in. Weisenberg himself is in a new relationship. His name, Tam, is a I can't pronounce it. P-S-E-U-D-O-N-Y-N. I can't pronounce it. He does not want to vilify his former partner or get back at her. When he tells his own story, he tries to understand her side of all that happened. Despite the pain they share, the two have never broken off all contact. She has experienced too much loss and rejection, and her dream was to make up for that, although material possessions. She always needed to be admired, which was kind of addiction, and that explains why she was so scared of losing what she had. For Weisenberg, the debate over domestic violence is not a case of men versus women. Like the many advice centers for men, he always points that out. And in the final analysis, women are far more likely to be victims of domestic violence than men, and that the consequences are generally much more dramatic. And he adds that it was the women's movement and its struggle for equal rights that, in the first place, led to an awareness of violence against men. So he's saying that because of the women's movement, that opened the door for the awareness of violence against the man. So that's a good thing. So after all, women began to challenge traditional role models long before men. And he concludes that struggle is far from over. Also, the German states announced new hotlines for male victims of domestic violence. So, y'all, I guess that's all for now. But I will be coming back with another video shortly, y'all. Because I have a new phone and my camera is working all right. My camera is working all right. So see y'all. My new phone I'm using now. I have it right here on my stand. This is my old phone. And this is my new phone, y'all. This is my new phone. I do what I gotta do to get it done. No matter what it takes, I'm gonna stay in the run, y'all, because I love it. I love what I'm doing. All right, that's enough. I'm not gonna sing. So I'm just gonna say like, share, subscribe, hit that bell so you'll be notified of another video. I love y'all. I hope you love me too. Until we meet again. Peace.